Yo, 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 yo. What is going on, COD Familia? It is your boy BN, aka Mr. Kingdom Builder, and today I wanted to talk about how to organize multiple Roots of War teams if you are in a kingdom and or you just have multiple alliances, or you're in a union that has multiple alliances, whether that's a union or just being allies. How can you go about organizing if you have 150 players that all want to participate in ROW, especially with what it seems to be becoming a little bit, I don't know if I want to say popular, but definitely becoming something that I'm hearing a lot more about recently. And I think a general level of interest is increasing. There's also some things that I wish I could talk about. I will give you a teaser that there could be some cool things coming out for ROW in the future. And these are things that I can tell you I've advocated for. Now, I can't confirm at all. I can't say, yeah, these things are absolute. All I can tell you is there have been some conversations, and if these things do happen, if they come to fruition, I can tell you that your boy BN is going to be getting into the ROW game in a lot of really cool ways that I hope would allow for the visual, right, the awareness of the publicity, we'll say, on ROW to be heavily elevated. With that being said, let's focus on the topic at hand today, which is how do you go about organizing multiple ROW teams? So I'm going to give you a couple ways to do this. And then I'm going to give you at the very end, or the last option, will be my recommendation, and I'll give you reasons why on that. So number one, you could go with the standard, let's just do strongest to weakest. We'll just kind of do first string, second string, third string, or A team, B team, C team. And you just take the top 25 players and you put them in there, right? And based on the numbers you have. And then you put the top 25 players into the next alliance. Now, if we're looking at alliance boards here in this kingdom that I have a scout in, the example would be, like, let's say, in straightforward, let's say you're TATM, right? Or TATM, TM2, right? So you got 3 alliances, shells that you can move players around between for those that want to participate in ROW. You could say, as an example, TA, we'll just put the top 40 players that want to participate in ROW based on their power into TA. Then we'll put number 41 through 80, again, based on those that want to participate in ROW in TM, and then so on and so forth, down to TM2 and etc. Now that's one way you can go about doing it. The second way that you can do this is by simply going off of using the 40 players that are in each of those alliances, right? So, like, you just play it standard, right? Instead of doing any maneuvering or any transitioning or switching of players, everyone just says, look, we're just going to play in our own alliance. That's fine. We'll just do what we do. Third option is that you can move players around based on power. So, and I'm not talking about the top 25 strongest. Maybe you want to do it in a way that balances out the power, right? This is the other side of doing it. So you would say, okay, we're going to look at the 150 people we have, and we're going to form 4 or 5 teams of 3, right? Because you can have 30 players on your ROW team. So let's say you've got 150 players. You look at the top 150, and you divide them by 5, so you get 5 teams of 30. But you look at it in a way where you're trying to even out the power or evening out the tier level, right? So you could even say, look, we'll put, and this could be option 4, where you could say, look, we'll make sure that each team has an equal number of T5s, an equal number of T4s, and then you do it that way. Now, option 5, which I think is and bear in mind, there could be other ways to go about doing it. These are just some of the few that come to mind that I've had a minute to think about. Option 5, which is my recommendation, is doing it a little bit of a factored way, where you first and foremost go off of availability, right? So if I was going to do this, I would message I'd message every player and say, who wants to participate in ROW? I get that list. From that list, I would then ask them, okay, well, what is your average? I would say out of these RoW times, ROW times that can be done, right? Which of these slots are you able to join, right, for the upcoming week, or that you can do weekly, right? And if they tell you I can do this time every week, check that off. If they say weekly, then you probably want to check in with those players on a week-to-week basis, 5 to 6 days ahead of time. And so once you then get your data on here's all the players that want to participate in RW, here are their time availabilities, then the next question you would ask is, do you have T5 or are you T4? Okay, if you have T5 or T4, how many T5 troops and how many T5 troops do you have? Because the T4 mostly at that point, when you're getting to at any level, even if you're saying higher levels of RW, you're probably going to have a decent amount of T5 players and those that have troops. But knowing what their troop capacity or availability counts are can be important in factoring that in. But even if you're looking to do it at a very bare minimum way, you would just say, okay, well, how many T5 troops do you have unlocked? As far as how many units or tier types, right? So do you have one T5 unit or tier unlocked? Do you have two Tier 5 tier unit types unlocked, etc.? And then you would go off and you would organize, players based on time availability, and then trying to balance out T5s, and then balancing out T4s, right? Doing it that way. And then thirdly, you can look at power if you want to try and power balance that out a little bit more, because the power can also be indicative of how many troops they may have, unless obviously you're collecting that information already, right? Then you can sort that a little bit more appropriately. If I was going to do ROW, that's how I would do it. And the reason why I say this, let me touch on the balancing versus just going top end with it, right? Where you kind of do pyramid, everyone at the top, you work your way down. The reason I say this is because personally, I think that there's a lot more motivation in that, where hey, all of our teams are pretty close in power. Everyone has an equal distribution. Players will get a little bit more fulfillment out of it, especially if they know that you're allied or everyone's kind of trying to work together in this kingdom, even though obviously we don't have home kingdoms yet. Hopefully we do. Eventually, down the line would be fantastic. But then you also have to look at the opposite side of that, which is, well, what are the negative psychological impacts of players that are always being put into situations where they're kind of almost being told, well, hey, you're the A team, B team, C team, first string, second string, third string. That can have unforeseen repercussions. And I can tell you, I've seen a lot of those play out that way, and it usually ends up the same way because of the way that players are kind of being passively labeled. On top of, sometimes you just feel like you're just getting the bottom of the barrel players. You're just getting players that aren't strong enough or they don't have as many troops, right? And so you have to kind of think about what are the pros and cons. How can players take it if you're not doing things in kind of a fair, balanced way, right? And bear in mind, it does depend on how your kingdom is being built, on how your alliance is what your outlook and what your goals are, what's the expectations that you set early. If you don't have any allies or any unions, or if you do have, then you're just kind of setting those expectations as early as possible, which is that, look, we're just going to fight as our group. We don't need to kind of trade or do anything. We're not interested in that. And then that way, and those that are your allies or in a union with you that might be thinking, hey, we could do some player swapping, right, to maybe improve some of the ROW areas, right, can help. There's always the thing you can do where you do temporary swapping, right, where you would say, okay, well, ROW is coming up, right, these players can come and join now and get in a day before registration pops, or the day of registration pops, so that way everyone's in the alliance by the time it comes up, and then you can play, and then those players can go back, right, so they're kind of just being loaned, around a 24-hour period. Or 1 to 2 day period, if you will. So there's always that option, but if you do that, you probably might have to kick some players if your alliance is active enough, unless everyone just kind of goes to a lower rank shell, and then that way you're not really having to remove anyone. That's another option too as well. And so I say all of this in that, my viewpoint and my thinking may differ and vary from others. I am very much of the mindset that I like to try to always attempt to do things in a fair and balanced way, because I think that there's a lot more value, and I think there's a lot better return on investment that you get from that. I think that that's one of the best ways you can go about building a community that you consider to be a balanced and well-rounded community, if that's the goal and the aim that you're looking for. That's just what I believe in. And so for me, doing things like power balancing, trying to kind of put alliances in situations where it's more of a rising tide lifts all boats, rather than I'm just going to take the express lane type of thing, or I want to ride the biggest wave. That I always feel is a lot more important when you're trying to build relationships, rapport, and again, building a community. So I like the idea of having multiple ROW teams if I was running a kingdom, and I would try to split it up in that way. So that way you could have multiple alliances that are at the top, and then multiple alliances that feel like, hey, we can compete with people no matter the matchup that we get, because we have a really good balanced approach to the players that we're including. So again, that's my view. Those are my thoughts. Those are my potential solutions on ways to play that out. And I'd be curious, to know, for those of you that play, let's say you're in a situation where you have 2 or more ROW teams, right? Whether it's because you have a lot of players within your one alliance, like let's say you have 160 players in your alliance, you have 90 of those people that want to play ROW, and you have to kind of figure out how to do it, or it's because you have multiple allies in your union, and because of that you have a lot of players that want to participate, and you want to try to figure out, hey, is there a way where we can use multiple shells, or can we use a lot of these players to participate with us? It's also a great way to do team bonding. If you're trying to do bonding with players from other alliances, it's a great way to do the relationship building, the rapport building. That can strengthen your loyalty, your camaraderie, your belief and respect for one another, right? And that can strengthen the relationship in that union between those alliances and leadership as well. There's a lot of other external factors you can look at when you approach things in that way. So again, if you are in a situation where you have 2 or more alliances, or you could fill 2 or more alliances with 30 players, because let's just say you have 60 or more players that want to do ROW, whether it's from a single alliance or multiple alliances, I would love to know, what have you done? And have you done something I've recommended? Have you done a variation of it? Is something I recommended something you think, oh, hey, maybe that might be a good idea, let's try that out? Or have you taken a different approach and you have found success in it? Let me know. Let us know in the comments down below. That, I think, is going to do it for me on this go. I will tell you, starting tomorrow on, for those of you that are still here, you're going to get a little sneak peek on this. Starting Friday, November 10th at the earliest, is when we're probably going to be continuing or starting up our top 25 game-wide stat series again for this month of November. So again, as long as I get everything and all my ducks in a row, it'll start as early as then. So you guys have that to look forward to, a little sneak peek there. And now that's going to do it. As always, until next time, I will catch you later.